So that was the warning signal that the recording is on. So again, very much a welcome to the CEE2ACT knowledge transfer webinar. And on the agenda of today, I will do a very short introduction of myself and the program of today, and of course the CEE2ACT project. And then we have three keynote speakers, three very interesting presentations, which are covering three very essential elements, building to knowledge transfer and capacity building in developing the circular bioeconomy. I will take a moment later on to introduce them personally, but here you see a quick overview, and you already have been seeing in the invite our attractive agenda. And I hope this is to a lot of tastes and a lot of likings for those of you in the European member states. And we even have participants from Asia and the US continental that are at least signing up for this webinar. So very much welcome again. And we show you a little bit about the CEE2ACT project first. Being a European project, we have just started in September 22, and will continue to run the project until the next year. Of course, the project is just a project, but we couldn't do without our coordinator, Gianardo Technological Solutions Limited from Hungary, which is expertly guiding us all through this project. It is Horizon funded and under the governance call, which also leads up to a nice combination of CEE2ACT partners, 17 partners actually from 17 European countries, in which all the Central, Eastern and European countries are being represented, but also some of the more Northwestern and Southern Europe, covering the demographics of the consortium. Here you see all the logos, and you probably see a lot of partner organizations you might be familiar with, and hopefully this is also a chance to meet up with them and extend your own network of experts and researchers, and definitely also more stakeholders from the business community, the NGOs and the policymakers community. Okay. So about the project itself, you might already have been involved. You are either a partner or a hub member or otherwise related to this project. But the main aim of CEE2ACT is empowerment, specifically targeting countries in the Central Eastern Europe and the Baltics, coded here below. But it is about developing bioeconomy strategies and action plans, basically through knowledge transfer and the adoption of innovative governance models. Actually, to put it very much simply, it is a very much bottom-up, organized, coordinated, structured approach, combining a lot of stakeholders from farm to fork, forest to sea, driving exchange and collaboration within and between those countries, as well as other countries which are dealing with similar topics, and therefore create this encouragement, motivation, and incentivizing that you are not alone in tackling the bioeconomy problem, as in what it is, what it means for you as a government, as a business, as a research institute, but help it to translate that into something actionable, contributing to targets that are not only relevant at the global level, but also in day-to-day practices of organizations across the globe, as well as within Europe itself. So how do we achieve this? I mentioned the bottom-up approach. What does this mean? That it needs to focus on the mantra of four things. You need to be establishing a target, you need to collaborate with each other, you need to start measuring, and you need to start acting. But you do that with people and organizations that you need to trust, and you need to understand. You need to have a common foundation to make those difficult steps forward. So building trust and understanding between those stakeholders is an important element in the CEE2ACT project in the first year. So last year we devoted a lot of attention in building the community, building the networks, and building the relationships that are the foundation of moving forward. The second year, which is actually for us this year, 2024, is really about building the knowledge and the capacity to the development of those strategies. If you know each other, if you know what you are aiming at, then you can really make the common ground further for actions and new strategies together. The building of the vision and the road together bridging for national bioeconomy policies is the concluding part of the CEE2ACT project, and hopefully also something that will leave a legacy that will profit and benefit a lot of stakeholders on the bioeconomy topic in the years to come. Already having mentioned the national bioeconomy hubs, which is a key delivery mechanism for the CEE2ACT project. Hopefully, and I'm sure that a lot of people listening in today are actually part of a national bioeconomy hub in their country. They are platforms designed to bring together those relevant stakeholders through a number of activities. Basically, we are creating opportunities to meet each other and to talk about the topics that drive change together. They foster exchange of ideas and common elaboration of national bioeconomy roadmaps, but they don't intend or are designed to replace any existing initiative or already developed strategy in your country. Rather not. It builds on the existing networks and clusters, and we will be supporting the already work present, but want to multiply it, want to accelerate, make it more combined and aligned, and for sure also establishing an exchange of ideas and solutions. CEE2ACT solutions and toolbox do include things like inventories of best practices, e-learning modules. We have self-assessment tools in the making, matchmaking tools, but definitely also very much contributing to developing bioeconomy strategies and those action plans together. Part of building towards the bioeconomy is knowledge transfer and capacity building. Looking in the dictionary, there's not really one definition for knowledge transfer, and you can have many takes on it. But basically, it is really about the sharing of knowledge with other people, other actors. But it is happening in exchange. It tells you what I know, tells me what I need, but also how I can be helped or can help others. The mechanism within CEE2ACT is really basing on needs related to different types of knowledge that are needed to either develop the strategies necessary for achieving bioeconomy or the implementation of those strategies together. So it's not necessarily about creating new research agendas, but really identifying what type of knowledge gap there is, what do we need to know to advance, but not only what is the knowledge itself, but how can I collaborate and share and learn with others that either have experienced the same thing before you, so you can draw from their experiences, but definitely also how you can create a new knowledge that is not there yet and can be made available in another way. Having identified the needs and challenges, because we already have been building towards this knowledge transfer series over the past year in collaboration with the stakeholders of the hubs, we have talked about, okay, so what is challenging about technology that is needed to make the transition, socioeconomic factors, governance, regulation, legal barriers, and what type of knowledge, capacity, and stakeholder collaboration are there and need to be addressed in the knowledge transfer and building of capacities. We have identified those elements which are centering about the know-how. So what kind of technology, what type of actionable activities we should be doing, what type of research should be developed, but also how can you strengthen the organizations to really internalize that knowledge and make it work in daily practice. Of course, we are monitoring that and we're going to review that so that the lessons learned within the CEE2ACT project can really help and stimulate other stakeholders to replicate or accelerate and upscale in later stages. The thing we do want to impress upon you that this webinar is part of something bigger, the Knowledge Transfer series, building on the hub meetings which are being organized on a regular basis in the different CEE2ACT countries. We will be organizing at least 5 specific and dedicated knowledge transfer activities throughout this year. So today is actually the kickoff of the first one with this webinar. We also have the series of national workshops that are planned for May and June. There will be a second webinar on the 27th of June, for which the invitation will be issued quite shortly after this webinar. And we have a site visit, so a physical meeting planned in Wageningen mid-September this year as well, welcoming also stakeholder members to Wageningen to really have the real-life exchange and experience on bioeconomy and the knowledge items there. There will also be an online training about knowledge transfer and all its elements relevant for the bioeconomy strategy in November. We have and hopefully are presenting a very interesting mix of learning and exchange with experts, but also facilitating peer-to-peer learning and sharing. You can see us on the website. I will skip over this one because this is typically information you can see for yourself after the webinar is finished, but know that we are very much capturing all the informations and all the recordings, all the available reports and showcases via the project website CEE2ACT.eu. So, having arrived today at this moment, just finishing my introduction, like I said, we are kicking off the knowledge transfer series. And this one is really outside in. So typically the presenting expert with inspiration and advice on working towards the circular bioeconomy. And we are, with that in mind, really hoping that today's topics, today's suggestions, advice, key messages, what we have been asking our key presenters to develop for you, especially, are matching what you'd like to learn and know about the knowledge agenda for the bioeconomy. A bit of funding opportunities, the legal alignment issues and strategies will be covered by our 3 keynote speakers, which are starting now, because I would like to hand over the floor to Peter Jongebloed from our, he's the head of the Wageningen University and Research Grant Office, but also head of the Wageningen Europe Council, and is very, very experienced in all kinds of funding and financial mechanisms, for sure with this high knowledge intensive topic of the bioeconomy. So Peter, if you like to take the floor, then your 20 minutes will start. We are a little bit strict on the time keeping, and I've seen how many slides you've brought to the table, but for sure your learnings and your key messages will echo very greatly with the webinar participants. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much for your nice introduction, and I'm very honored to be in this webinar.
Sorry.
Can you, and I had a nice title, I think, for this webinar. It's about the funding landscape and about a funding strategy for bioeconomy. Can you have the next one, please? As we all know that regions, member states, cities, and Europe are facing all kinds of challenges, climate, food security, health, pollution, unemployment, brain drain, etc., and there are transitions needed. And there are also all kinds of national, European and regional policies in place or being developed. And industry, farmers, NGOs, citizens need to adapt and to innovate to tackle all these challenges. And as we all know, the research and innovation are a very important driver for this change and these transitions. So research performers, academia, research institutes, SMEs, industry play a very important role in transitions, also in the bioeconomy. And to boost the innovation and investments in this bioeconomy, there are a lot of different funding schemes available, from basic research, but also to investments. The next one, please. And there are different ways to show all the kind of grants which are available. There are a lot of grants at regional level, the European Fund for Regional Development, for example. There are national grants, there are transnational grants like Interact, there are European grants like Horizon Europe, Digital Europe, and there are also international grants for collaboration outside Europe. There are grants really focusing on research. There are grants only focusing on innovation. There are grants for startups. There are a lot of investments available for companies to grow. So there are different grants with different technology readiness levels. There are also different types of grants. There are personal grants for the best scientists. There are collaborative grants where you have to work with different actors. And there are specific SME grants. There are also big differences in the consortia for the different grants. In the number of participants, you have personal grants for the bright scientists, you have collaborative grants, you have public grants, you have public-private grants where companies and research organizations or national research funders and industry are working together. There are grants which focus on science. There are grants which focus more on economic development. There are grants focusing on societal issues. And there are also different criteria for grants and different expected outcomes. And what we see, and I think that's especially the case also in the bioeconomy, there are more and more grants who are asking for consortia with different types of stakeholders. This multi-actor approach where together that you have co-creation with all the actors which are involved in the bioeconomy. So there are many opportunities for collaboration and there are a lot of funds available. Next one, please. This is just an example. This is for the Dutch situation, but it's also applicable for your specific country. There are two axes. The left axis is about the number of participants. So you have grants with only one participant, and that's personal grants. And also you have different grants in the value chain with different technology readiness level, from fundamental research to competitive development. And it's very important if you're looking for the grant that there's a grant that really fits. If you want to work as a scientist on a very specific team, then you have to choose maybe for a collaborative grant, for the personal grants with a very low TRL. If you want to work together with industry and really want to innovate, then you have to go to a higher TRL and maybe have to work with more participants. And then you go, for example, to Digital Europe. So this also shows that there are many different types of grants and that it is that you should have a very good look in it if it fits your personal ambitions or the ambitions of your company. Next one, please. Another way to have a look at the different grants is also to look at the career, the stage of your career. There are specific grants for PhD students. For example, within the Marie Curie doctoral networks, there are grants for postdocs, there are grants for young researchers, and there are also grants for established researchers at national and European level. Next one, please. And for the bioeconomy, there are a lot of European funds. I'm mostly working with European funds. I would like to focus on international European funds. Of course, there are the structural funds, a huge amount of money, mostly for projects with higher TRL, and the European Fund for Regional Development, the Interreg are examples of it. Eureka is another interesting scheme where it's a public network of research funders, national research funders for international cooperation in research and innovation. I also included all the links. LIFE, it's a very interesting program if you're working in environment and climate action research. It's all about demo of all kinds of solutions for in environment and climate. Eurostars is a program aiming at SMEs, innovative SMEs. Our small consortia where SMEs from 2 member states are working with research performers also from those member states. COST, that's not a research program, but it's a network program that brings together researchers from a certain on a certain theme, on a certain topic, and then you can work together on a research agenda for 4 years. And it's very interesting if you want to join a network to join such a COST network. Digital Europe is also a huge program focusing on bringing digital technology to business. So it's quite innovation oriented and working on digital innovation hubs everywhere in Europe. And Horizon Europe, the program where I'm working on, which is very broad, where you can have a lot of opportunities. Next one, please. So the bad news is that the funding landscape is quite complex, if I showed you. And it's also not an easy job to write winning proposals. And also the success rates really vary. And you can say as a law that regional funding is the success rates are a little bit higher than the European funds. But the good news is that there are many possibilities to get funding for your activities in bioeconomy research. And I always say, if you have professional support and very good staff, it's doable. And also, if you know about the background of the program, it's also doable. And if you delve deeply into the background of the funder, it's also doable. So it's not a mission impossible. Next one, please. And as I said, that it's easier to find funding at regional funds are easier, and that European programs are very complex and also lower success rates. But there are a lot of benefits of being part of a European program. In this case, Horizon Europe. It gives you access to new contexts, to new networks. It can broaden your existing networks. You can get access to complementary disciplines. That is accounts. It's for a university, for a research institute, but also for a company. It's often used to recruit young researchers. It's very good for your career development if you are part of a European proposal, especially when you are coordinator, but also if you're a core member of a consortium. It's very good for your public relations. You have very good connections with the European Commission. It gives you access to new knowledge, new skills, new products, new markets, and new input for policies. It's also, and I think that's very important, can also contribute to the strategy of your organization and for the internationalization of your organization. And it's also fun to work in an international project with different cultures. And I always say, by the way, funding. And of course, it's very competitive. Next one, please. I think you are quite familiar. I hope you are a little bit familiar with Horizon Europe, the framework program. But there are three different pillars, and they are quite differently from each other. The first pillar on the left side is excellent science. And that's a bottom-up program, you can say. It's all about scientific excellence. And you have, for example, the ERC grants for the best researchers in Europe, but also outside Europe. The Marie Curie fellowships for the postdoctoral fellowships and the doctoral networks. And also the research infrastructures, that's really science-driven. So if you really want to do science, then you go to pillar 1. Pillar 3, that's a new one. That's the innovative Europe, and that's all about disruptive innovation in Europe. They want more successful companies within Europe, and because Europe is really lacking behind in innovation. That was the idea behind it. And it's also a bottom-up program. So it's all about better valorization of research and bringing science to business. But I think for the bioeconomy, the second pillar, pillar 2, is most important with these 6 global challenges, the 6 clusters, and that's more the top-down program with research and innovation, so with yearly work programs. Can you go to the next slides? And especially the cluster 6, food and bioeconomy, and it has a longer name. That's very relevant for the bioeconomy, and it has 7 different destinations, and there are a lot of opportunities for research programs for the bioeconomy. But it should really fit into the work program. Next one, please. And to make it even more complicated, quite a substantial part of the budget from the clusters is dedicated to the so-called European partnerships. European partnerships are programs where national research funders pool their resources on certain topics with co-funding from the European Commission. Or, and that's, for example, for the CBA, the Circular Bioeconomy Europe, that the industry invest quite a substantial amount of money in research in the bioeconomy with co-funding from the European Commission. And there are separate calls for it. So the message is there are also a lot of European partnerships which are relevant for the bioeconomy with separate calls. Next one, please. And we also have the 5 missions. And they are also paid by the budget of the clusters, and they have a separate work program also with separate calls. So also there are possibilities to build programs. Next one, please. And now I want to dive into a little bit more into how can you be successful in grant acquisition. And I have 4 points I would like to raise to you, and I will go through them in the next slides. But you need a very good international strategy. You should invest in joining international networks, and you should have international oriented staff. And what is very important, you should understand the mission and the background of the relevant funding programs where you would like to join. And the optimal support of your researchers in grant acquisition and grant writing is very important. Next one, please. So for the first one about the international strategy, it's very important to make choices for themes of areas you want or need to collaborate internationally. And also think about what is the added value for you, what you can add to the program or to the specific topic you want to apply for. And really look for and invest in strategic partners and network to work with in these specific themes. And also position your organization, and it can be a university, an institute, or a company, as a valuable and trustful partner in projects. And also very important, because what I often see is that researchers are a little bit reluctant to join international projects in the new member states do have incentives for researchers for international project development. And sometimes I know that also national authorities have incentives in place to stimulate researchers to be part of or to coordinate international projects. Next one, please. And one thing is very important is, okay, what I said, the second point is to invest in joining international networks. And the question behind is how to be involved in relevant international projects and networks in your strategic area. And what you could do as organization, and you can make an analysis of the relevant research networks, public-private networks in your specific domain. And then you could consider, is it interesting for me to join? There are, for example, there is a European technology platform plans for the future. Maybe that's very interesting for you to join, because there are also your potential collaborators in projects. Also very important, join conferences, workshops in your domain in Brussels or elsewhere, and make friends for future projects. I already mentioned the cost actions. There are a lot of cost actions in your domain, and on the cost website you can find there is a very good search facility to find cost actions. And you could see whether there are cost actions which are already still running, which are interesting for your specific domain, and those cost actions are open, so you can join the workshops of those cost actions. And also very interesting is this Cordis project database with all the projects which are funded by the European Commission in different framework programs. And there is a very good search facility, and there you can find projects which have been running or still running in your specific domain, with summary and with all the project partners. So it's also a very good way to find very active organizations in a specific domain, which you can approach to be part of their projects. Next one, please. Also, what's especially researchers have the pitfall that they really want to do their research in all kinds of funding programs, and they are not understanding or not looking into the mission or the background of the specific program. So many applications fail because they are out of scope. And you should know what are the policies underneath, what is the main driver of this program, what are the expected outcomes or the impacts from this specific program. What are the target groups of the results? And is the focus on science or more on economic impact? And also, does the instrument fit your ambition, your strategy? For example, in Horizon Europe, you have quite some coordination and support actions, and those are network projects, not for research. If you want to do hard science, then it's not interesting to have CSA. Next one, please. So for the European programs, it's very important that you know about the priorities of the European Commission of Ursula von der Leyen, with the 6 priorities: the European Green Deal and the Europe Fit for the Digital Age, and also Stronger Europe in the World are very relevant for this bioeconomy domain, especially the Green Deal. Next one, please. So the Green Deal, probably you all know, which is 8 packages or 8 strategies, which have, for example, the zero pollution, the biodiversity strategy, the farm to fork, and they all have very clear targets for 2030. So your project should more or less should contribute to the realization of these targets of the relevant strategies of the European Green Deal. Next one, please. And maybe we can skip this one because you will get all the slides, but this is another representation what really shows the relation between the bioeconomy and the European Green Deal. So the bioeconomy is really in the heart of the Green Deal strategy. So there are a lot of opportunities within the bioeconomy for projects within the Green Deal. Next one, please. So the key to success is not to ask research to ask the European Commission to fund your nice research. No, you have to help the European Commission to solve its problems. Next one. Now we come to the fourth point I would like to address, and that's the support for research in the grant acquisition. So in the pre-award and also in the post-award, the managing of grants. That's really key for success. One of the things is also to have early access to relevant calls and work programs for your researchers. I often see that you had if you 1 week before the deadline you get access to a work program that's too early. That doesn't work. You should have very proactive management researchers and staff who really want to work international and invest in the grant support with administrative, financial, and legal support. Training and skill development for your researchers and staff, project management skills, writing support, and incentives and time for researchers to be part of such a proposal writing team. Next one, please.
Yeah, just as a reminder, 2 minutes left in your presentation.
I think that I will. So make use of all support available. And for example, you have national contact points for the different European programs in all the member states, and they can be very helpful. They are not everywhere the same way organized, but they can be very helpful to get, for example, early access of work programs. Make use of experienced researchers within your organization and your peers, and they can really help you with developing a proposal. And of course, you can always make use of consultants. But there is a but, because they are quite expensive. And if you use consultants, then you should really make also a learning out of it and try to, because in the end, I think it's much better to have this kind of expertise in your own organization. And of course, there are many training courses for grant writing. Next one, please. So this is the way we are in Wageningen organized. We have the so-called first line support at the level of the science groups, so very close to the researchers, and it's with liaison officers, finance and control, and the legal departments, and they do a lot of administrative, legal, and financial support. And then the Wageningen Grant Office at corporate level, which I'm heading, which have very specialized support for researchers. Next one. I will not go into detail, but one of the things we do is that we give feedback to proposals, to draft proposals of our coordinators, and I think that is really appreciated very well. We make all kind of templates to make the life easier of researchers. We give a lot of training, and we also have a commercial grant support program tool, which can be used by researchers to find relevant grants. There are quite some commercial database available. That's also something you could have a look at. Next one, please. Okay, this is one of the last slides, so I'm really in time, because these are some tips and tricks for the less experienced grant writers in the audience. Be proactive. I think that's very important. Don't sit and wait until they can approach you. It's you have to do the work. You have to show up your added value. Develop a network with friends and show your added value. What can you add to a project? Don't say, I'm interested in this project. No, you have to show why you are an interesting partner for the project. And that can be of different things, not only scientific excellence, but also access to very interesting cultivars, for example. Know about the political background of the different funding streams, and also stimulate your researchers with incentives. And always, if you're not so experienced, start as a partner. I think that's also a very important message. It's also not so much work to be partner. If you are a coordinator, I think Hilke can say a lot of things about it. It's a very timely investment. And organize and make use of all the available support, as I said before, and invest in your relations with relevant networks. And I think a project like CEE2ACT is a very good way to build networks between the different organizations. And I think that was my last slide. I have one slide with some interesting links dealing with Horizon Europe. That's the next one. Yes, 20 minutes? Or I don't hear you, Hilke.
Just 1 minute over, so that's excellent timing, specifically for a researcher, research organization. Thank you very much, Peter. So we do have a couple of minutes time to take some questions from the floor. So for all the attendants, there's a Q&A function in the Zoom webinar. And whilst you're very cordially invited to make use of this function, briefly reflecting on questions. I don't see any questions yet. There probably will still come up. Peter, well, you and I know each other personally. So if there's like the one thing for specifically Central European countries to say, okay, so this is my key takeaway, what would you say?
Yeah, I think that's
Billy Darlings.
Yeah, I think because it's as Wageningen, we are in a very good position because we are active in for many years in European framework programs, and we have a very good reputation. So I think the big challenge for the CEC partners is to get access to all those big European funds. So it's very, as I said, it's very important to be visible. And you have a lot to because I've been I've been visiting and giving training courses in many parts in Central and Eastern Europe, and you have very good scientists and very good people, but you're not in all the networks. So I think that's important. Be part of the networks and show yourself, and also be proud. I think that's also maybe you are sometimes a little bit too shy because you have a lot to offer. But that's I think that's a main message. And and I'm convinced that we need a European approach. So we really have to work together. This co-creation not only with Western European countries, but with Europe, with organizations from the whole of Europe, and because also we have different climate zones and etc. etc. So there is really a need for further collaboration.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's a very vital thing to very much acknowledge that there is, of course, not necessarily knowledge gap between the countries, but very much making use of what's out there, and definitely to collaborate as a mentor. There are a couple of questions coming in the Q&A. So there's this question from Matea from the Digital Innovation Hub in Croatia. The question is there an option to cooperate with your office when we are not part of the university? So that might be a little bit leaping up from how to get into that supporting function.
That's it's a nice question. Then I have to start a consultancy. Of course, we focus on because we have not a very big team, so we focus especially in Horizon, for example, at the coordinators. And we give a lot of information for the rest of the organization. And we have no capacity to help other consortia, which are, if Wageningen is part, then we give some support, but not to projects where no Wageningen is involved. So,
no, I can imagine. But definitely there will be Croatian universities which have similar or hopefully similar grant office types. I know you are part of academic networks, also of grant offices. Can you tell a little bit about that exchange?
Me?
Well, as in there is the collaboration between grant offices of universities.
Yes, we have. We have in the Netherlands. We have only 14 universities, so that's not so many. But we are quite well organized. We have every 3 months we meet with all my colleagues from the different universities, and we do a lot of exchange also in the way we work, how we support people, but also in the lobby to Brussels. For example, now we are already starting discussions about the next framework program. We try to come up with joint messages. So this learning from each other, I think that's very important. And yeah, we also have a very good national contact points in the Netherlands, not only for the Horizon Europe program, but also for Eureka and Eurostars. And I think there are also some other member states who have quite well advanced national contact points, and those can also be used. And then maybe also for this digital innovation hub in Croatia, maybe they have very good national contact points for this.
So there are more questions in the Q&A. We do need to move to Louisa's discussion, but Peter, I invite you to answer live on the specific questions. I see some from a student and some specifically on money. So whilst we are introducing Louisa, the Q&A continues to be live. So thank you very much, Peter. Moving over to our next speaker, Louisa Viljo. I probably have pronounced it not correctly, but hopefully somewhere in the area. Coming from the RISE Institute, you are a process and innovation manager, specifically working on the Swedish bioeconomy strategies, and you've agreed to share your insight and knowledge about the strategies to promote legal supporting frameworks and alignments. Specifically, there are quite a number of regulatory frameworks we need to take into account, and to make it more complicated, bioeconomy stretches over quite a number of topics. So please take the floor, Louisa, and you also have the 20 minutes countdown starting for you as well.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here today, and also with such an interesting panel. So thank you to the CEE2ACT team for inviting me. My name is Louisa Viljo, so you were pretty close. And I'm here, as mentioned, to talk about strategies to promote legal support and alignments. And more precisely, I will talk about some learnings from the Swedish bioeconomy strategy inquiry that I worked with. But unfortunately, I'm quite ill today, actually. So I hope that my voice will support me throughout this presentation, as well as my brain. So fingers crossed for that. And next slide, please. So who am I? Well, that's the question that actually every now and then pops into my head. But in this context, I am, as mentioned, a process innovation leader at RISE. And RISE is the Research Institute of Sweden. And our mission is to work for new solutions, basically, for a sustainable future. And next slide. And we are a state-owned research company with over 3,000 employees. And we also work in many different fields of knowledge, for example, within bioeconomy and system transition. But as you've heard, I'm not here today to talk about RISE. I was asked to talk about the Swedish bioeconomy inquiry. So if you're curious about RISE, that's another seminar. And so next slide, please. Before I get into the good stuff here with the learnings, I just want to clarify a question that you might have. Mainly, what is an inquiry? And that depends on which kind of context you're in. Here in Sweden, we usually refer to inquiries as a series of reports that started back in the 1920s. And these reports are conducted by investigation teams that get appointed by the government. And it's also the government that issues the assignment directives and thereby kind of set the framework for the inquiry. And an inquiry is an integral part of the Swedish legislative process. And we usually use them to gain more insights into complicated issues we would like to address, how to address them, and what potential side effects or consequences those actions might lead to. And so next slide, please. So in June 2022, the Swedish government decided to appoint a bioeconomy strategy inquiry with the assignment to propose a strategy for a sustainable, competitive and growing Swedish bioeconomy, and if we found it necessary, to submit proposals for the development of the bioeconomy. Next slide, please. So why did the government decide that they wanted this inquiry? Well, it was mainly 3 different reasons. And as I guess we are all aware of here in this digital room, the climate crisis is upon us, and strengthening the bioeconomy is one way of moving from a fossil-based economy to a fossil-free one. The production of materials, food, chemicals, energy, and so on need to be based on sustainably produced resources. So therefore, the bioeconomy has a crucial role to play, of course, together with the circular economy. But to get there, the bioeconomy needs far better conditions than it has today. And the second reason, if you click, is to strengthen the welfare system, especially in rural areas. Today, Sweden faces several demographical challenges. One is that more and more people move into urban areas, which forces the welfare services in rural areas to shut down. And the bioeconomy, both its resources and its industries, are often situated in rural areas. So by strengthening the bioeconomy, we can create more work opportunities in rural areas, and thereby also increasing the opportunity to live and work all over Sweden. And I guess many of you recognize these reasons. They are usually the common ones we use when arguing for a bioeconomy. We've heard them before, especially within a Swedish context. But the third reason was actually completely new for us. And it was also this that in discussions with politicians and civil servants that was used to gain most traction. And this need we actually used to attract people that weren't particularly interested in the bioeconomy, but they understood this need and they took it very seriously. So the third reason then to strengthen the bioeconomy, and click again. Drum rolls. There you go. The third reason to strengthen the bioeconomy is to reduce the vulnerability in society and increase the security of supplies. Sweden has basically no fossil resources, and by having a fossil economy, we are very much dependent on imports of resources. But at the same time, we have a lot of renewable resources. We have a growing forest, we have an active agriculture sector, and we have a vast potential in our blue economy. So by strengthening the circular bioeconomy, we have the possibility to become significantly less dependent in case of war or a crisis. So next slide, please. Yeah, so after getting this assignment, our first order of business was to investigate how national strategies has been formulated previously, how they were used, and hopefully to identify some elements that needed to be in place for a national strategy to be successful. So we partnered up with the Swedish Agency for Public Management, and they looked at approximately 60 other national strategies from very different fields to learn what works. And when they went through all this material, they saw that the governments usually use strategies for mainly 3 different reasons. And the first, you can see it here, is that strategies constitute narrative, and the government can use them to describe a societal problem, and that in turn can increase the acceptance and legitimacy of actions. And the second, and I can click, is that strategies can be used to solve sectorial problems by facilitating governance and coordination involving many different actors from different sectors. And the third one is that strategies can contribute with consensus on how to solve a cross-sectorial problem, and also the actions that you need to take, especially in situations where the state has limited influence and need to cooperate with others. So when constructing a national strategy, these aspects need to be considered, but there are also other, even more important aspects that must be taken into consideration. And these are what we call core components of a successful strategy that the Swedish Agency for Public Management identified. So next slide, please. So here is like a checklist that you can take with you. So the first aspect or the first component is that a national strategy needs to be concrete and clear, have a concrete purpose, and also contain at least one or more goals about what is to be achieved. And furthermore, there needs to be some descriptions of responsibilities and roles, and also how goals, policy instrument, other efforts are connected with each other. You can press again. The second component is about follow-up and evaluation. And here it is important that the strategy includes some plan for a systematic follow-up and evaluation. And the monitoring system should measure what is most relevant for goal fulfillment, as it's not possible to consider all aspects. And by prioritizing goals and metrics, you can actually create a really good basis for planning and also prioritizing measures. So we can click again. Thank you. The third one comes to the decision of a strategy. And when it comes to these aspects, you need to consider the purpose of your strategy. And often the purpose of a strategy is to contribute to long-term policy. And therefore, it's important that the goal of this national strategy should be decided by the parliament. In Sweden, we have many national strategies that are decided on by the government. And that means that they usually actually end if there is a change in government. Next one, please. The next aspect regards ownership and management. And these are also, of course, important components that needs to be defined. A strategy that involves several sectors should usually be coordinated by the government office, where a designated ministry should be given the primary responsibility for the strategy. However, other ministries also needs to be represented in some kind of cross-sectorial strategy group. And next one. So as previously mentioned, a strategy can be used where the state must cooperate with others. So the practical implementation work of a national strategy is usually based on both private and public actors being involved and contributing with, well, significant commitment. So measures should also be designed to ensure this. And next one. This one might seem obvious, but it's actually often lacking in many other strategies. And it's the fact that there needs to be sufficient resources for the actual implementation of a strategy, both in terms of managing the actual strategy and also its measures. And lastly, next. is that a strategy needs to be based on a well-described problem picture. And the problem picture should be connected to the purpose of the strategy, as well as those intended goals. So this might all seem obvious when I say it like this, but they actually found that very few strategies, about 2 out of 60, actually included all these components. So the Agency for Public Management really recommended us to work actively to include all these aspects into the strategy. And so next slide, please. And one way to address these aspects is to work with theory of change. And theory of change is a tool or a framework that helps you to clarify that structure that is so valuable by clarifying how and why your activities lead to your identified goal. And there are several versions of theory of change out there. What you can see here is a simplified version. When you construct a theory of change, you actually start from the right-hand side by describing the needs that you want to address. And after that, you describe this future state, a goal, where those needs that you have identified have been solved. And some people usually talk about that square as the intended impact of what you want to achieve. And after defining this long-term goal, you look at the short-term outcomes that needs to happen in order for that long-term goal to be fulfilled. And once the outcomes are defined, then you can start looking at activities and resources. And for each step in this process, it's very important that you motivate the link between these boxes by referring to scientific studies and previous knowledge. And you also need to be really, really clear about which assumptions you make and why. And after constructing your theory of change, you have much better conditions to also identify suitable indicators for what you want to do. So this is what we did together with politicians, industry representatives, local actors, and many others to get them all on board. Because when people have a say in which needs are important to address and also how to do it, it's much easier to get them to support the strategy and its actions. So next slide will show you what we agreed on. So we've already discussed the identified needs, and these were also confirmed in our discussions with other actors. And depending on which actor we talk to, they prioritize these needs a bit differently. For example, national politicians, they tended to prioritize the need to increase the security of supply, while industry representatives usually emphasize the need to transition from a fossil-based economy to a fossil-free one. And as mentioned previously, I did a bit too much animation on this, I think. Thank you. As mentioned, the goal is then a future state where these needs have been met. So for us, that means that the goal got defined as by 2040, Sweden will have a more resource efficient, resilient, and competitive bioeconomy throughout the country. And for each word in bold here, we have identified indicators and also target levels for these indicators so that we can actually measure whether or not we reach our goal. So next slide, please. So we had identified where we wanted to be in 2040 and also which needs that we see today. So the question that we then asked is, well, how do we get there? So next slide, please. And here there is a lot of information. I guess you can actually press forward for a bit. So, and then one more. Perfect. So By having workshops and interviews with actors within different sectors and especially on different levels in society as well, we got excellent input as to which outcomes that were the most important in Sweden to reach in order for us to reach our overarching goal. And these were, as you see, more resource efficient bio-based solutions, increased regional, national and international cooperation, and also a developed knowledge base. And for each of these outcomes, we proposed measures that should be implemented as soon as possible. And we also suggested indicators for following up these outcomes. And also, according to me, a robust evaluation system as well. So this was our solution, our proposal. And right now, people might wonder what is actually happened to this strategy. No, I am. Right now, our proposed strategy, along with its measure, is currently being prepared within the government office here in Sweden. So right now, we actually have to wait and see what happens next. According to the time schedule that we proposed, we hope that they will reach a decision in early 2025. So fingers crossed. So next slide, please. Yeah, it's not easy to try to summarize the work you've done in 6 months in less than 20 minutes. But I hope that you found it at least a bit interesting and valuable. And if you're interested to know more, you can actually scan the QR code here, and it leads you to the policy or the strategy document. It's unfortunately in Swedish, but there is an English summary in the text. And if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact me on my email address there, and of course also post them in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. So thank you for listening.
So you have a very silent applause here, but thank you very much, Lovisa. That's always the thing about talking to a screen, but thank you very much for elaborating on the Swedish process. And you see a lot of echoing of the collaborative effort, and the narrative was very attractive as this launching mechanism to start a conversation, what is needed and how to move forward. You did mention a little bit about, hey, knowledge plays an important role. And of course, this being part of the knowledge transfer series, can you tell a little bit how that knowledge gap or knowledge need was happening or organized or expressed between the business community and the Swedish research community? Is that something that you can elaborate a little bit about?
Sure, I can try. I think that the knowledge gap is quite different depending on which context you look at or which classes you have on. What we saw as the main issue was that the companies are screaming for competence, and in Sweden we have very few students actually studying to become relevant, but studying in relevant fields. So we have a lacking competence base, and that is like the main issue, I would say, for companies in Sweden today. They want to evolve their companies, but they can't really see how, seeing as they can't reach the relevant competence. We do have a lot of research within different bioeconomy fields, but the problem there is that this research is usually funded only for 1 or 2 or 3 years. So there was a big need within the research field to have grants that you could apply for 5 or 7 years at least, because otherwise it's hard to build on existing knowledge. You're just confirming what you already know. So I would say those were the main reasons or main gaps in Sweden today.
Yeah, I almost 100% sure that is very much felt in across other member states. There is a question coming in from the Q&A function, so of course all the other attendees are very much invited to also insert in questions directed at Lovisa. There is, sorry for my mispronunciation, from Rita Sos from Hungary, which thanks you for the presentation. She is wondering what was the role of the state in the cooperation between the different stakeholders, and what were the biggest challenges in the development of the collaboration?
I must think on how to answer this, since it's being recorded and it's official.
You can only share what you want to share.
The first answer is that the state role was to give out this assignment directives and to give us the opportunity to conduct this work. They also appointed experts that we could consult on a more or less daily basis, so that was really valuable. But when it came to having these workshops and to include regional actors, to go to different authorities, that was us from the inquiry team that were responsible for that. So we had a lot of possibilities to conduct whatever we found necessary to do so. But we were, of course, we had to answer to the government, so we couldn't do whatever we wanted to. But when it came to what was most important or difficult, I would actually say that we got appointed by the previous government in 2022, and then Sweden changed. So we have different parties now in the government. And that is usually a very uncertain time when you're a part of an inquiry team. There are a lot of inquiries that actually gets forced to shut down because they're not valuable for the new government anymore. So for us, that was a very uncertain time, and we had took a lot of time to just make sure that the new government understood the need for this investigation, the need for bioeconomy strategy, which was a bit, we had not anticipated that was going to happen. So we were forced to change focus of the work for a while, just to make sure that we were not going to be shut down.
Well, thank you for elaborating on that. And I can imagine there are many finer things happening, basically, yeah,
Yes.
in that process, because it has also people working with people. There is another question from Piotr Jorka. He's from Poland, also one of our CEE2ACT partners, and he also thanks you, of course. He mentions, which is something we do see more often, that is, you said, put it like this to the screen, it's just easy, huh? But this step-to-step cooperation checklist is not always easy, yeah? Also dealing with policymakers and strategy preparation. Can you give us some tips on how to improve the efficiency of such collaboration, making them, the policymaker side, more involved? Any kind of adds to that? The only solution could be to close them all up together for 5 to 7 days in one room. They can't go away.
We actually tried that. Not for so long though, but yeah, we had that thought. And it's not a bad idea. The problem is when we talk about like politicians, is that usually they have a lot of different fires to put down. So it's very difficult to plan in advance for like a 5 days workshop. You need to just take what you get. But I think that an important aspect is to really stress the urgency of this. And in Sweden, we've talked a lot about the urgency for climate actions, and not really been that successful, to be honest. But now when we started talking more about the need to have a secure supply chain, and to talk about, okay, what happens if Sweden actually gets into war? how are we going to get food on our table? How are we going to drive the like ambulances? How will you solve this? Then it actually was much easier to gain traction for these issues and to talk with relevant politicians. So I guess it's my advice is try to really stress the urgency of the matter. And what we also did in these settings, when we actually managed to get, for example, politicians to gather and talk about these issues, was that we had actually not that much time, which meant that they, on a very short period of time, had to come with answers and had to be on their feet. We forced them to not just talk, but actually come with solutions, ideas on how to solve these issues. So instead of just saying, no, this is not possible, we can't do this, we can't do that, then we ask them, okay, so what are we going to do then? You've got 1 minute, come on, what are we going to do? So we kind of like try to all the time force them to be more concrete. So I guess those are my two main takeaways. Be stressed and show urgency and try to stress them.
Yeah, and I think that the commonality, that it is a common sense of urgency, because definitely there are day-to-days and other issues that need to be tackled. I think those of us working in bioeconomy topics know of priority setting and weighing and all those other things, like life happens basically. But definitely good to bring to the attention. Definitely CEE2ACT is all about keeping it on the agenda and making it a good topic for conversations. Having said that, so we have a beautiful palette, and I want to thank Lovisa for this contribution so far. If there are questions popping up in the Q&A, I cordially invite you to answer them personally live. That's an option, of course, here. If you want anything or additions there, please feel free to. And also for the attendants, if you have other questions for Lovisa, continue on asking them during the duration of the webinar. And now it's time to switch over to Evelien van Leeuwen, which I don't have a hard time pronouncing because she's also from the Netherlands, from the Amsterdam Advanced Metropolitan Solution Institute. She is the scientific director over there, and she has agreed to bring to the floor a different point of view from the national perspective going into the city perspective, but definitely as a nexus and a multiplier for collaborative efforts on many topics, including the circular bioeconomy. So I'm really proud to present Evelien, and please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Hilke. And actually, I have slides where there's a lot of animation. So I'll just say click yes to go to the next one. Otherwise, we won't make it in 20 minutes.
Okay, no problem.
Or say next. Okay.
Next.
So yeah, I would like to present to you our institute that we work on with Wageningen University, Technical University of Delft, MIT in Boston, and the municipality of Amsterdam. Next. And so we focus mainly on cities. So it's on advanced metropolitan solutions. And just to give you a bit of also transfer from the former topic on bioeconomy, which was really nice, but going into the cities, is that we do focus a lot on cities. And cities are great. Economists tend to think that that's where the money is made and it's spread over the rest of the country. So they're places of development, innovation, and creativity. And also, for example, in the developing world, are places of hope because that's where education is, that's where health services are. And also places of change. Next. But cities are also places of large inequalities and a lot of challenges. And in countries like the Netherlands, but probably also in Sweden and in Germany and Belgium and France, there are places where also most poverty is and most unemployment is. People tend to be less healthy and less happy. And besides that, of course, cities have a large environmental footprint. So there's a high consumption. Also, similar people tend to consume, let's say, more in cities than in rural areas in terms of food, for example, and other products. Perhaps it's a little different on energy, but there are really hubs and central points of a lot of consumption, induced greenhouse gas emissions, and also waste is kind of piling up in cities, you could say. Next. And then if you also compare the urban and the rural, so the urban and rural linkages, then in the cities it's where 55% of the world population lives, 70% of the energy is consumed, but only 10% of the energy is produced. 75% of the CO2 emissions is responsible, and it uses only 3% of the total land surface worldwide. And so also in the bioeconomy, there are strong urban-rural linkages and interdependencies that go both ways, even though we don't always realize that. We often think that the rural areas are dependent on the cities, but if we think in different ways, then of course it's actually the other way around. Next. Yeah, so this is, they should collaborate. So we need to reinvent these cities. And how can we facilitate and develop and design sustainable and inclusive cities that are within planetary boundaries and not only here now, but also elsewhere and later. This is also for the city of Amsterdam a real important question, and also a real important challenge actually that they have on their radar. And that's part of many policies and of many challenges they deal with. Next. Actually they kind of asked for an institute, or let's say they started this institute, or they facilitate the institute, AMS, Amsterdam Institute for Advanced Metropolitan Solutions. And it's about reinventing cities for sustainable and a just future. And it is, like I already said in the introduction, a joint knowledge institute of TU Delft, Wageningen University in Research, and MIT. And in a core partnership with Amsterdam, located at the heart of the city. And it's really about using academic insight and doing a relevant academic research that is also providing real solutions for cities and for real citizens in Wageningen, but also worldwide. Next. And like I said, it's based at the heart of Amsterdam. And now I think you have to do a couple of times next, and I'll keep talking. Oh, no, it's better actually. So it's at the heart of Amsterdam. What you see here in the map is the central station of Amsterdam. And to the left is really the historic center, and it's 10 minutes walk. People from the Netherlands will recognize this because you also see the Museum Nemo there. It's on an old marine terrain area. Next. Yeah, like I said, we have urban challenges are at the core. So everything we research that we focus on has to be relevant for the city. And the city often comes up with their challenges, but we also get those challenges from our scientific partners. Next. And we actually, the institute started 10 years ago, and that's what I wanted to tell earlier, is they wanted to have a scientific, a technical research institute in their boundaries. They have two very good universities, but they're general universities and not so much the technical side. So actually they run a design contest, and they asked consortia to write a proposal for an institute for at least 30 years to be funded for the first 10 years. So that was around 10 years ago. And our proposal on AMS won this contest. Next. And so here again, here's based. So here you might have to click a couple of times. And so it's really at the heart. And if you would walk to our institute, you will meet up with TomTom. There's Booking.com. There's Nemo, the Science Museum. There's the Amsterdam University of Arts. Is there Tech Leap, a big technical innovation. There's Codem, the school for coding and computer. And there's also the CTO, the technical office of the gemeente, of the municipality of Amsterdam is there. And then there's our building next to it. So it's really, also officially, it's an innovation hub, or it's an experimental area. There's slightly different rules for testing out new innovations and to collaborate, but also it's really kind of ecosystem with a lot of companies and partners. Next. And it's a unique location. Next. We can experiment in our backyard. Here we experiment on space for food and getting nutrients from sewage water, and how we can use that to make fertilizers for plants at one location. Next. We can experiment on the water. Here you see a rowboat, which is a autonomous boat. It's the first in the world that's really truly autonomous, and we built this together with TU Delft and now MIT. It's become a spin-off now. Next. And if you go inside the building, next, then downstairs there are people making things, so they're really working on new innovations. Next. There are students. This is a student that wanted to learn more on the geography of bike theft, that got 100 bikes from the depository of the city, put GPS trackers on them, put them back into the city, and followed them across the city. And so we are also kind of entrepreneurial in our research. Next. There are lectures and conference and gatherings. Here you see Carlo Ratti. He is from MIT and also an well-known architect. He's one of our PIs. Well, he's sharing insights with a group of people. Next. We have conferences. Education is also, we have our masters. And here you also see a conference on transdisciplinary education. Next. And there are a lot of people from industry and town hall that come together, work on projects or to meet there. Because we have the researchers, we say we have to talk about either a challenge or a project proposal or a running project. And we will meet here because it's a kind of, well, we are open for meetings. We can host them. We have a nice location. And it also has a kind of great buzz in our building. And so we can facilitate that. Next. We have entrepreneurs, so we also have room for, we have a startup booster. So we, with the students, they can run in the startup booster project, but also from outside. And here is the Prince Constantine of Orange. So he's here looking at what we are doing with the startups. And because his Tech Leap company is also in the marine terrain area, and he was interested in seeing what we're doing. Next. And like I said, we have our masters. It's a joint master degree between Wageningen University and Technical University of Delft. The students are in our building, so they have their own floor. There are around 70 students a year. It's a 2-year master. And the teachers, the lecturers come to Amsterdam to teach them. And then the students do a lot of research inside the city. And here you see that the chief science officer from Amsterdam giving also a lecture to the students. Next. And that means we also have a student community. Here they celebrate their 50th anniversary. And a lot of alumni that also go into the city and outside the city that are still part of our ecosystem and partnering up with us. Next. Well, this is a quote from a student who says, I studied at AMS and I got a diploma from both Wageningen and TU Delft. Next. There are also a lot of international visits. People are very interested in learning on the contents, what we're doing, but also on our mode or how we work. And here's the Minister of Singapore that came to learn more about vertical farming and our vertical farming projects. So we also collaborate with them a little later. We also visited with actually delegation from Wageningen University and Artumol. We visited them, those same people. Next. And here also you see the mayor of Amsterdam, Femke Halsema, together with the 2 presidents of Wageningen and TU Delft, or the former president of Wageningen, where we also talked about how AMS is basically a campus from Wageningen and Delft in Amsterdam, and what we can do also for the city. And so we also regularly update with her on the institute and the link with the Amsterdam city. Next. And so what our institute is, it's basically a city that really wants to make a change, that wants to become much more sustainable, be also at the forefront of circularity transition, for example, and the energy transition. It's a small city, but it has quite a big network of policymakers and people working for them. And we have 3 world-class academic partners. So next. And so basically that we bring that together next. And I always say, so the white part is actually kind of glue of the people that are at the AMS Institute building. We have program developers, we have research fellows, we have the students, and together we form the AMS ecosystem and do a lot of really cool stuff. Next. I would like to give you an example also of how we can work and collaborate with the municipality of Amsterdam. You might have visited Amsterdam or not, but you might know there are a lot of very nice historical buildings and a lot of quay walls and canals, a lot of water. And those quay walls are, of course, cultural heritage, but they're also very old. And here was in the Grimberg wall, this was like 4 years ago, that suddenly collapsed. So that was, okay, what's happening there? Next. So what the city of Amsterdam actually did, they called to AMS Institute and they said, you have a good link to TU Delft and to other partners. Can you bring some scientists right away here to understand what happened and also to learn what we need to do with our system of canals and quay walls? They were already aware of that there was a multi-billion innovation investment that needs to be done to have it climate resilient, that part. But because of that collapse, they said, okay, we have to do something right now. From that came here in the middle of the picture, you see one of our research fellows, Martjan Hemel, who was a researcher at that time. And he kind of was in the middle of, okay, let's do some experiments to see how these key walls are actually working. And to the right, you see a part of a historical key wall. It's near Amstel Station, so it's just a little bit out of next to Central Station. We were allowed to put this key wall in 3 parts and to do different loading experiments, put heavy loads on it, a lot of sensors inside the key walls, inside the water, and to see how they would move and how the water would move in which direction, to learn more about the bearing capacity, but also what would happen if the bearing capacity would not make it anymore. And at the end, this became a 2 million euro experiment with a lot of partners that was a kind of initiated from the collaboration between the Institute and the Municipality of Amsterdam. And we learned with a lot of scientists, with a lot of project developers, projectontwikkelaars, so project developers as well, that they were stronger than expected. And that we were less in a hurry to do the renovations and to make the plan that we already started making. Next. So we were now collaborating also with the Dutch Science at NWO, with the Dutch Science Institute, not institute, what's it called, Peter Jongebloed, NWO in...
Organization.
Organization.
Okay. Yeah, the Dutch Science Organization. We made a big grant call, or not a very big one, but a full 4 million euro grant call offered by the Dutch Science Organization, but bringing in different partners to learn also on this key walls project. So 3 consortium were formed. Also one on bio-based construction and how to use materials from, in particular, sewage water that can be reused, that materials can be turned into construction materials that can also be used in and near the key walls. Next. And at the end, all this together turned into a National Growth Fund program or project that was submitted with a large consortium of over 100 million euros that was granted now, and where we also going to work with, well, in the whole of the Netherlands on this topic. And so we started from this key wall that collapsed to, okay, we have to do something, what can we do, to quite a big experiment, and to also new kind of research on new materials, also with other people, to a big growth fund of 100 million euros. And for the city, most importantly, a lot of they get a lot of knowledge, and they can learn about their future and about their strategy. Next. And at the end, this is Martjan Hemel. He decided to become from a researcher, a PhD student. And a couple of months ago, he graduated and finished his PhD. And that was actually also a lot in the news because it had very relevant insights. Next. So what we do at the AMS Institute, we do research that's relevant from an academic standpoint, that's also relevant for the city. And we do it next on 6 topics, 6 themes. Next. That is smart urban mobility, it's climate resilient cities, it's responsible urban digitization, circularity in urban regions, metropolitan food systems, and urban energy. And we choose these 6 topics also because that is what our at MIT, Wageningen University, and TU Delft are experts on, and that we thought 10 years ago, but still think these are really relevant topic for the city to create a sustainable and inclusive city. Next. And just to give you an impression of a couple of projects to work on, so what kind of projects are that? And I selected them, of course, a bit in the context of the bioeconomy. And we have, for example, an EU project. It's called EU for Advice. It's building a better network for short food supply chains. And here, Wageningen University is a big partner, but also the province of Flevoland, for example, Flevoland, the municipality of Amsterdam, of course, and a lot of small SMEs that want to be part also of this transition into more short food supply chains. That's only the Wageningen of the Dutch part, because this is an EU project. And so we learn and we interact a lot with different types of partners, both, let's say, the triple helix partners, actually quadruple helix, because citizens are also involved. Next. And we also have a project which focuses more about technology, which is about protein monitor for catering facilities. So the city of Amsterdam wants to become more sustainable. Also, when in their policies, when they, for example, order food or when they host events, they want to have it as sustainable as possible. So how can Amsterdam stimulate its citizens and visitors to eat more plant-based food? Which is a much smaller project where we directly connect Wageningen University to the municipality of Amsterdam and work with students and researchers. Next. Here are two other interesting projects. One is on GrowX. It's accelerating the development of sustainable urban agriculture, in particular in the case of vertical farming. And there we work with the company that's now called GrowE, a big vertical farming company, where we really try to learn more and extend our knowledge on how vertical farming can, even in the city of Amsterdam, be an important part of a sustainable ecosystem. It requires less water, less nutrients, less land, but a lot of energy. But what if we can make the vertical farms actually part of the energy system in such a way that it can shave off the peaks, of our energy demand and be a kind of battery, use the plants as battery and use the energy when there's a redundancy of energy. It can contribute both to more sustainable food and also to the energy transition. Well, we work with we have a project on solving the urban plastic soup. So that also relates to food, because a lot of the food packages ends up in the city and then ends up in the water. There's a lot of research on this on the sea, but also in the canals and in the rivers. There is a lot of plastics moving into our natural systems. So here it's about monitoring plastic waste in the streets, but how they move from the streets to the water, where they end up in the water, and of course then how you can retrieve them from water with different types of technical solutions to retrieve them. Next. And another topic that we work on is on timber construction, actually. And this is a relatively small project which was about timber myths, but how can we use more timber in our construction activities? And the city of Amsterdam wants that of all the new buildings that they will build in the future or have to build, because we have a big shortage of housing in the Netherlands, 10% of the housing should be actually built with wood and also with other bio-based materials, so fibers from certain plants, and for isolation and those kind of things. And so how can we learn more, do that in a more sustainable way? The timber construction, how can we also transfer skills for timber construction in the municipality of Amsterdam, but also get the material as local as possible, or at least as sustainable as possible. This is also joint collaboration with architects, for example, and with the universities and the municipality. Next. Yeah, and the final project that I wanted to show is this ideal city monitor. So it's about technical solutions, and it's about creating a more sustainable system, but also it's about, what would be the ideal city? What is it actually that matters and that we should go for? Because this is something that the city of Amsterdam also struggles with. The city of Amsterdam is very much involved, for example, in the donut economy approach of Kate Raworth. She also visits the city a lot, but they're also involved in the sustainable development goals and in what we in the Netherlands call broader welfare. And these are all kinds of systems that want to go beyond just pure economic growth and economic production. But if we go beyond it, what is it then that the city should steer on? And so then we said, with a couple of partners in Amsterdam, can we kind of create the ideals of the city? What kind of city do we want to be? Can we measure that, and can we monitor that? And can we then put it as a kind of umbrella over these other frameworks and to see if we go in the right direction? So in particular, if we have to make choices between the energy transition and circularity, for example, you have to make choices that might on itself either sound good, but so how do you make those choices, and can you then link to the ideals of the city? And this really helps also thinking about what matters and how you make choices. And I don't think at the end we'll come up with this ideal framework, or we will come up with a framework, but it's more the process going through it that is really, really valuable. Well, just to spend my final 5 minutes, I think, on the lessons that we learned, because we exist as an institute now for almost 10 years. So we'll celebrate our 10th year anniversary in the coming months. And just to give a bit also of the history, it started very small, of course. I mean, we had the municipality of Amsterdam said, we want this institute. And they had a huge budget for the coming 10 years. It means that the university said, okay, we are involved. We have our in-kind contribution to the institute. But you start basically with nothing. We started with a building and some people. And then you have to build up. And that was mentioned earlier in one of the presentations. You have to build trust and you need to be a reliable partner. And so you start small and you just want to attract as many researchers as you can. Well, actually, after 10 years, and we also had our 7-year evaluation, we can now say there's now a true partnership. And how came about this true partnership? Because in the first 5 years, they just let us, let's say, develop. We see each other, ourselves also a bit as a, let's say, kind of a kid that had to grow up. And in the beginning, you have to try, you have to make mistakes, and you have to find out a way to collaborate, because it's learning by doing, both from the municipality side, from the universities, and from the institute as a whole. And so we created trust and true partnership also because of this long-term commitment. So within 10 years, you can build networks, but you need at least, let's say, 5 years to get to know each other, to meet each other, and to create this trust. And also to know that people will be there for a longer term. So we invested in a network for 10 years. We found these skilled and motivated counterparts because the university invested a lot. So they also sent good people to us to interact and to be the counterpart. And so we created a true collaboration with the municipality, knowing each other very well. Next. The second lesson is it's important to build on the social capital. So I already said these networks are really important, and you kind of need to build networks at multiple levels. So bottom up, but also top down. And so if the let's say the leaders, but also the people let's say on the ground, they get to know each other, then you get the best interaction from different ways. For us, it's also really important to have this local embeddedness. And so we have a building in Amsterdam. We are really embedded there. We are part of multiple ecosystems on the marine terrain, but also a municipality and a wider region. And so having that place and being physically present is really important. Also the strong links with the mother institutes. And so to bring in professors, research fellows from the universities into the institute that also go out in the university again, have the students that are in our building and go out again. It really makes that you can create a social capital and a very broad network that you can use. Next. I have 7 levels, by the way. The power of permeability is really important. So as an institute, because we are a research institute, we're also kind of platform where we want to be a kind of broker for the questions of the city, the questions from the universities, and bring them together. So we are transdisciplinary by nature. We need to speak different languages, and it helps if you have a city that you focus on that can help with this translating the different languages that different disciplines speak. We also need to be really open, and we have an institute that has a kind of can-do mentality. We want to solve problems, and we always look for solutions. We don't look for barriers, but we try to make things happen. And we are a knowledge broker. Next. And this place matters. I already said, so we have this building, but you can be an institute and kind of network platform, but having this building where people meet and having a kind of clubhouse feeling where you have a floor with students, have a floor with startups, have a floor with researchers, and they mix, of course. That really means that you get to know each other, and it's a very vibrant place where a lot of ideas spread and energy also flows around. Place also matters because Amsterdam is, you could say, kind of perfect scale. It's not a huge city, but it has a lot of ambition. It's well known. It also has quite some funds for doing this and for funds for the transition. They take the transition very seriously. So they want to learn. They want to become more sustainable. And place matters also because it means you can be you can offer hospitality, and that's also really important if you want to bring people together. It helps if you have a nice building where you can say, okay, you want to bring in some people, meet at our place, and we can offer room for workshops, for seminars, for meetings. Next.
Yeah, to close off, I imagine.
It's about solutions that work. And so that is also a lesson learned, but that makes it successful, that we look for solutions that work. And it can start from fundamental research, but at some point it has to end up in the city. And it doesn't mean that all the research the individual projects need to be in the city, but you need to see from the fundamental one where it might end up eventually. And then in the intermediate steps, you learn a lot. And we focus on societal impact and academic excellence. And the two really bring also a lot of energy. 2 more lessons. Learning by doing is really important. I already said so. It was also successful because the first 5 years we were allowed to learn. And so a true partnership means that you can also make mistakes and that it's a safe space. We can be critical towards the universities, although that's a bit more difficult, but we can be critical towards the municipality. And they also invite us to. They sometimes say, for example, this ideals monitor, measuring what really matters, we cannot ask that inside the municipality because they won't be able to give a fair answer. But you as a critical friend, we trust you and we want this question somehow to be addressed. And you can be a critical friend. And we use a lot of living labs as safe places to do research, both safe for the citizens and for the partners, but also for the researchers to learn and to experiment, but also to be sure that it will be stay in the university or in the municipality to go to the next step. And finally, I think it's really important also if you have such collaboration to have this kind of can-do mentality. And so make things happen, work on solutions, be a bit creative, and really add and contribute to what's already there in the city and the university to jointly make something real. That was it.
Yes, thank you very much, Evelien, and very much enjoyable to looking across the 3 the presentations, that taking the city and the city problems, the K-walls as a starting point, building bigger things is very inspirational. At least I hope definitely also for the other partners, because everybody can really see that in their own city or place of living happening. So very close to mind. Just quickly checking the Q&A, but I have not yet seen a question for you, but other attendees similar to the previous ones, please do so. Maybe just a question specifically, because you are at the city level, so maybe twofold. One, how is the connection to the more national strategies which have similar topics to address that? And the other part is, what about connecting to other European cities?
Yeah, that's a good question. Both are. And so everything we do has to be relevant for the city of Amsterdam, but basically a lot of things, or most things, also need to be relevant for other cities. And so we're not going to solve something that is unique to Amsterdam. But we use really Amsterdam as our case study, as our living lab. And that's a very good case study in living lab. And we team up with other cities a lot in European projects or in other projects. We have a lot of visits from other cities that want to learn from us. And we also go to other cities to learn from them. And so it's indeed really a network. And then regarding the national policies, so here again, because we are in a lot of national and international research projects, by definition, you also collaborate with the national policies and on national challenges. And often there also in universities, there's research done at the national level or at, let's say, the more general level. And then if you want to work with these insights or solutions, then you need to go to the local level, because then you'll find what works, in which context, and how there might be either synergies with other solutions or there might be competition with other solutions. And so this exchange between the national level policies or ideas or more fundamental research also, and trying it out at a local level, because that's where the people live and that's where all solutions and insights at some point need to land, I think is very fruitful and go also both ways.
Yeah, very much the case. Just a final check on the Q&A. There is a question coming in. Not necessarily, but very much thank you for that. There's still time for the attendees to put in some questions that Evelien can answer live during the chat. Because now we are actually coming to the closing part of the meeting, even though we have a couple minutes left. We're going to share some of the ideas there. So basically, I'm not going to capture everything, but just as looking back on Peter's presentation on a lot of funding is available. Typically, when we are talking about knowledge transfer, when we're talking about implementation of bioeconomy strategies, of course, the money comes into the equation, and money makes the world go round in a way. But there's definitely a lot of competition going on, specifically in European funding, but there's of course similar things happening on the national and even on the city level, knowing that the AMS Institute is also very familiar on those local level fundings and overshoots happening there all the time. So maybe, but it is also good for the attendants here during the webinar that it is not a mission impossible, to quote Peter, making friends, helping to solve problems instead of asking money. There's nothing as irritating, just give me money and I will solve it. I think also Lovisa and Evelyn showed that actually really not necessarily agreeing, but really getting a good picture, a good understanding, what is the problem we are all dealing with, and helping to tackle that. And it can be as concrete as walking in the city and seeing that the cable drops down, as walking in the forest and noticing that there is a lot of decay or otherwise impacts from climate change, from bioeconomy aspects going on. Because this is very real, the urgency is very real. And knowledge combines us together here. It helps to solve those problems which are real and not something only discussed in the ivory tower of academia. There was also a call from Peter saying that be visible. You don't need to be shy. And this is something that is relevant for all, but to get to know each other, to create those trustful relationships, echoed by Lovisa and by Evelyn, is definitely really about stepping up, speaking up, because if you are hiding it or are waiting for the other, it is very unlikely that it will happen. Lovisa kind of almost copied the CEE2ACT mantra of target, collaborate, measure, act, but definitely had that steps in place to have a narrative. It is basically creating the raison d'être, the reason to do it together. And it is something shared, but not necessarily understood the same by others. So part of knowledge transfer is trying to figure out what the other is dealing with, how they interpret it, what the problem is for them. And it is more than just forestry or just waste or just food, because all those things are very much interconnected. And for sure, in the next steps of the knowledge transfer series, we will be talking about how you can connect those different disciplines as well as policy areas which are covered by the bioeconomy. Having said that money is important, also stating that resources are often lacking. Resources are not only money, and I think probably all of them speaking today, screaming for competence. Not only because you need people who are well educated, but well educated in the right fields for the bioeconomy. So definitely also the people here attending, a good strong call for the younger generations to become motivated and inspired to tackle those problems, which you can see walking around in your city, basically, to do so. And the other part is resources are also time bound. And yes, even CEE2ACT is much too short to solve everything all at once and at the same time. So therefore, and I think the AMS Institute also shown that after the 5-year period with growing pains, with mistakes happening, but showing that if you take that long-term perspective, if you take the long-term investments, that you can really make the change for good in establishing the relationships together with the business community there. So definitely the Lego picture, I think most will keep on remembering. I always like the visualization of how things can be connected, the glue of bringing people together, and definitely the can-do mentality, is a real call for action, because can-do is also about the knowledge, because knowledge is nothing if it's not applied, if it's not tried and tested, if it's not making real in real life. So creating that safe space with critical friends, a direct collaboration with scientists and the business practitioners and the citizens and the NGOs, really create something that is not a quick fix, because it's not done within the next year, but definitely something to grow in the long term. So that is my initial attempt to connect the dots. For sure, there is a lot more to say. Looking forward, after today, I kind of already announced it, there will be the National Bioeconomy Hub workshop series, specifically the stakeholders within the 10 Central European countries are very cordially invited, and you will be hearing more of us, because the topic will be knowledge transfer during those meetings. But as you are also cordially invited to the second webinar, which will be happening on June 27th, which will be where we today were outside in, there we will be inside out. The more examples and sharing of the expertises between the 10 countries will be there. And the hub leaders, so the lead partners from the CEE2ACT consortium, will take the floor with a guided interaction to really help construct and identify the relevant elements, the matchmaking, the tendering of the knowledge agenda, which plays such an important role in any of the bioeconomy strategies. You can see some items, potential contributions already listed on the presentation slide. And again, very much looking forward to welcome quite a lot of you at the Wageningen visit in September, and we will be launching the program in the INVICE in May. And of course, we come to the end, and this is not something that is you should regard as something simple, stupid, because knowledge is also important in collecting. Okay, so how did you like the knowledge that we have presented to you today? Not necessarily giving a ranking who you like, Lovisa better than Peter or Evelyn better than Lovisa. It's not a competition in reputation or likability. But what CEE2ACT really wants is to make that connection between the knowledge that is out there, the sharing of experiences out there, and what you need. How you as I'm speaking to the attendants personally, in your everyday practice, what works for you? Your contribution is highly appreciated. Just a couple of questions. The email will be sent out very shortly to you. It's not only to give the scoring to the presenters, but definitely also your opportunity to pitch in for relevant knowledge transfer topics that we will be covering with the CEE2ACT project, because this is bottom up, and therefore we cordially invite you to take part in that survey as well. Well, with just 2 minutes on the clock, I think we can end this webinar at this point in time. I just take a quick glance at the Q&A, but I do see some happening, so we keep the channels open for a couple of minutes after we close the webinar. It is now my place and my duty and my my honor to thank Peter Jongebloed, to thank Lovisa Wildo, and to thank Evelien van Leeuwen, who have agreed to come here today to share your experiences. I hope you also enjoyed this setting. I know it's a little bit weird speaking only to a screen, but very much we hope to welcome you at the Wageningen visit as well. And of course, to the coordinator of CEE2ACT, Maria Rosel Beatriz, with you representing the Gianardo partner and coordinator to CEE2ACT, and of course also Rise as also a core team member to the knowledge transfer team for the CEE2ACT project. So a lot of things, and of course to the time and availability of the attendees. And we surely hope you enjoyed this afternoon, and we hope to meet you on our next occasion. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful afternoon and rest of the evening.